Number 8. Elizabeth Wettlaufer. Between 2007 and 2016, Canadian nurse Elizabeth Wettlaufer killed and injured roughly 14 people under her care. She first found employment at Care St. Care, an elderly home in Woodstock. While there, she started injecting patients with fatal doses of insulin. Her first victim was 84 years old James Wilcox, a veteran of World War II and a father of 6. During her time at the home, Wettlaufer struggled with alcoholism and substance abuse. She killed at least 6 more people at Care St. Care before she left the facility in 2014. Some of her victims survived, and Wettlaufer would later plead guilty to attempted murder in those cases. After Care St. Care, she killed another patient and injured 2 others as she sporadically found work in Ontario. In 2016, she entered a drug rehabilitation program at a psychiatric hospital in Toronto, where she confessed her crimes to the staff. The police were notified, and Wettlaufer was arrested. She was subsequently sentenced to 8 consecutive life terms. In her confession, the woman claimed that she knew the difference between right and wrong, but added that she had uncontrollable urges. She said that God, the devil, or some other unknown force or entity wanted her to kill. Before taking her life, she could hear herself laughing and claimed that it felt like a cackling from the pit of hell. The laughter, she added, wasn't audible, but rather a feeling in her chest. For her crimes, Wettlaufer is regarded as being among the worst serial killers in the history of Canada.
Do you think these people died peacefully? Did they struggle at all?
All the people you've talked about so far died peacefully, in my opinion. And I am sorry. I'm sorry for what the families went through at the time, and I'm extremely sorry for what they're going to go through. It's awful.
Number 7. Niels Hoegel. Judging from the total number of victims he's suspected to have claimed, former nurse Niels Hoegel is the most prolific serial killer in the history of peacetime Germany. In 1999, he started work at a clinic in Oldenburg. It wasn't long before the facility started to notice a sharp increase in resuscitations and inexplicable deaths, the vast majority of which had occurred while Hoegel was on duty. The nurse was constantly present in emergency situations. In fact, it was Hoegel who'd injected the patients with Ajmaline, Sotalol, calcium chloride, or other substances. He'd done so, according to his prosecutors, out of boredom and the desire to display his resuscitation skills. In 2002, he transferred to Delmenhorst Clinic. Again, emergencies relating to arrhythmia or sudden drops in blood pressure started to spike. A police investigation was launched in 2005 after staff caught Hoegel sabotaging a patient's injection with Ajmaline. Hoegel was arrested and initially sentenced to life in prison for the murder of 6 patients. The inquiry into his activity as a nurse continued, and in 2019 he was convicted of a total of 85 murders. Further investigative efforts revealed 300 possible victims, spanning a period of 15 years. Number 6. Kimberly Clark Sains. Shortly after Kimberly Clark Sains was hired as a nurse at a DaVita dialysis clinic in Lufkin, Texas, the facility saw a dramatic rise in patients becoming ill during treatment. A number of them had gone into cardiac arrest, which is extremely rare for dialysis patients. In April of 2008, the authorities were called to the clinic after 2 patients reported seeing Sains inject bleach into patients' dialysis lines. Several syringes used by her then tested positive for bleach. When questioned by the police before the officers even mentioned the substance, Sains claimed she'd used bleach to clean dialysis lines. Further research revealed that in April, she'd been present at every incident in which a patient had died. Moreover, her hard drive revealed Google searches concerning the lethality of bleach. As part of the investigation, an analytical chemist proved that the bleach had entered the patient's bloodstream, causing red blood cells to explode and release iron, which sent them into cardiac arrest. Sains was sentenced to life, plus 60 years for killing 5 patients and injuring 5 others, although she was believed to have been involved in many other incidents. Number 5. Piotr Zelenka. From May to December of 2006, Czech nurse Petr Zelenka killed 7 people under his care and attempted to murder 10 others. At the time, he was working at a clinic in Havlíčkův Brod, about 60 miles southeast of Prague. Zelenka administered lethal injections in which he used heparin, a blood-thinning drug that caused massive internal bleeding. The main theory is that he killed his patients as a twisted test for doctors at the clinic, whom he didn't believe were proficient enough to discover his crimes. He confessed upon his arrest and, in February of 2008, was sentenced to life in prison. Number 4. Kristen Gilbert. Massachusetts nurse Kristen Gilbert was convicted in 2001 for the murder of 4 patients at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Northampton. She had started work at the center in the late 1980s. Before long, other nurses jokingly called her the Angel of Death due to the high number of deaths that occurred on her watch. Gilbert would inject her patients intravenous bags with massive amounts of epinephrine, and once they went into cardiac arrest, she'd attempt to resuscitate them. She'd create these crisis situations to display her perceived proficiency as a nurse, but also to attract the attention of then-boyfriend Justin Perot. He was a Veterans Affairs police officer, and hospital procedure dictated he had to be present in case of an emergency. In the midst of mounting suspicions, Gilbert left the hospital in 1996. Afterwards, she checked herself into psychiatric hospitals at least 7 times. In 1998, she called in a bomb threat at the VA Medical Center in retaliation to her former colleagues and Perot. She was arrested, at which point her past crimes were investigated by the police. Perot told the authorities that Gilbert had confessed the murder to him during a call from the psychiatric ward. VA staff linked Gilbert to over 300 medical emergencies and up to 350 deaths. She was only convicted for 4 of them and ultimately sentenced to life imprisonment. Number 3. Edson Isidoro Guimarães. In 1999, a hospital porter at the Salgado Filho Hospital in Rio de Janeiro witnessed nurse Edson Isidoro Guimarães as he fatally injected a patient with potassium chloride. Guimarães was arrested and several suspicious deaths were subsequently linked to him. The man, who'd come to be known as the Nurse of Death, confessed to 5 murders. He claimed that he'd chosen patients, mainly those suffering from AIDS, who were in irreversible comas. Guimarães said that he was at peace with the killings, as he'd spared the patients and their families of prolonged pain. He was convicted of 4 killings and sentenced to 76 years in prison. It's believed that from January the 1st to May the 4th of 1999, he was responsible for up to 131 victims. Rio's Secretary for Public Security suspected that money may have also been a motive for Guimarães' crimes, as every time he reported a death to a funeral home, he was paid $60. Today's topic was requested by April Matthews and Melinda Van Stant. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Jane Toppan. American serial killer Jane Toppan, active from 1885 to 1901 in Massachusetts, was born Honora Kelly into a nightmarish household. Her father was an abusive alcoholic who, according to rumors of his mental instability, ultimately sewed his own eyelids shut while working as a tailor. Kelly spent a few years in an orphanage before being placed as an indentured servant in the home of the Toppan family. She took the name Jane Toppan and began training as a nurse. She would come to be known as Jolly Jane because of her positive disposition. Beyond the facade, however, lay a disturbed serial killer. Toppan experimented with morphine and atropine on sick elderly patients. She altered their prescribed doses and would get a sexual thrill from seeing them drift in and out of consciousness. Toppan fondled her victims as they died and, according to one report, looked into their eyes trying to understand the inner workings of their souls. Her killing spree continued after she became a private nurse. In 1901, she moved in to take care of the elderly Alden Davis after the passing of his wife. Unbeknownst to him, it was Toppan who had killed her. Within weeks, she fatally poisoned Davis, his adult daughters, and his sister. She was detected following a toxicology report from her latest victim. Toppin confessed to 31 murders but was concretely linked to 12. At one point, Toppin was quoted as saying that she wanted to have killed more people, helpless people, than any other man or woman who ever lived. Number 1. Charles Cullen. During his 16-year activity as a nurse in New Jersey, Charles Cullen killed numerous patients, mainly by injecting them with insulin, digoxin, and epinephrine. Cullen dropped out of high school and after joining the Navy, passed the rigorous psychological exams necessary for working on a submarine. While he was serving aboard the Woodrow Wilson, an officer found him at the missile controls, wearing scrubs, gloves, and a surgical mask. Cullen gave no reason for his behavior. Ever since he was a child, Cullen had fantasized about death and suicide. During his time in the Navy, he'd be admitted to psychiatric wards on several occasions for trying to take his own life. After he was medically discharged, he started working as a nurse and murdered his first victims in 1988 at St. Barnabas. Due to a national nurse shortage, Cullen was able to move between hospitals whenever suspicions arose. He was detected in 2003 while working at the Somerset Medical Center. The police kept him under surveillance and, through a fellow nurse wearing a wire, found enough evidence for a probable cause arrest. Cullen agreed to cooperate with the authorities in exchange for them not pursuing the death penalty. He confessed to killing 40 people under his care and was given 18 consecutive life sentences. Cullen claimed that he'd overdosed terminal patients to spare them from going into cardiac or respiratory arrest. Yet, not all of his victims were terminal, and many were on the mend. He also said that he'd lived his life in a fog and blacked out during most of the murders. Experts who've investigated his activity believe that he may have been responsible for 400 deaths, making him the most prolific serial killer in recorded history. Thanks for watching. In a medical emergency, would you accept treatment from a nurse who's been suspected of killing their patients? Let us know in the comments section below.